Section 2. Vaisampayana said, when that night passed away and day broke in, those Brahmanas who supported themselves by mendicancy stood before the Pandavas of exalted deeds who were about to enter the forest. Then King Yudhishthira, the son of Kunti, addressed them saying, robbed of our prosperity and kingdom, robbed of everything, we are about to enter the deep woods in sorrow, depending for our food on fruits and roots and the produce of the chase. The forest too is full of dangers and abounds with reptiles and beasts of prey. It appeareth to me that ye will certainly have to suffer much privation and misery there. The sufferings of the Brahmanas might overpower even the gods. That they would overwhelm me is too certain. Therefore, O Brahmana, go ye back whithersoever ye list. The Brahmanas replied, O king, our path is even, that on which ye are for setting out. It behoveth thee not, therefore, to forsake us who are thy devoted admirers, practicing the true religion. The very gods have compassion upon their worshippers, especially upon Brahmanas of regulated lives. Yudhishthira said, Hey regenerate ones, I too am devoted to the Brahmanas, but this destitution that hath overtaken me, overwhelmed me with confusion. These my brothers that are to procure fruits and roots, and the deer of the forest, are stupefied with grief arising from their afflictions, and on account of the distress of Draupadi and the loss of our kingdom. Alas, as they are distressed, I cannot employ them in painful tasks. The Brahmanas said, Let no anxiety, O king, in respect of our maintenance, find a place in thy heart. Ourselves providing our own food, we shall follow thee, and by meditation and saying our prayers, we shall compass thy welfare, while by pleasant converse we shall entertain thee and be cheered ourselves. Yudhishthira said, Without doubt it must be as ye say, for I am ever pleased with the company of the regenerate ones, but my fallen condition maketh me behold in myself an object of reproach. How shall I behold you all that do not deserve to bear trouble, out of love for me, painfully subsisting upon food procured by your own toil? O fie upon the wicked sons of Dhritarashtra! Vaisampayana continued. Saying this, the weeping king sat himself down upon the ground. Then a learned Brahmana, Saunaka by name, versed in self-knowledge and skilled in the Sankhya system of yoga, addressed the king, saying, Causes of grief by thousands, and causes of fear by hundreds, day after day, overwhelm the ignorant, but not the wise. Surely, sensible men like thee never suffer themselves to be deluded by acts that are opposed to true knowledge, fraught with every kind of evil and destructive of salvation. O king, in thee dwelleth that understanding, furnished with the 8 attributes, which is said to be capable of providing against all evils, and which resulteth from a study of the Shruti, Vedas, and Scriptures. And men like unto thee are never stupefied on the occasion of a poverty or an affliction overtaking their friends through bodily or mental uneasiness. Listen, I shall tell the slokas which were chanted of old by the illustrious Janaka, touching the subject of controlling the self. This world is afflicted with both bodily and mental suffering. Listen now to the means of allaying it, as I indicate them both briefly and in detail. Disease, contact with painful things, toil, and want of objects desired. These are the 4 causes that induce bodily suffering. and as regards disease, it may be allayed by the application of medicine, while mental ailments are cured by seeking to forget them by yoga meditation. For this reason, sensible physicians first seek to allay the mental sufferings of their patients by agreeable converse and the offer of desirable objects. And as a hot iron bar thrust into a jar maketh the water therein hot, even so doth mental grief bring on bodily agony, and as water quencheth fire, so doth true knowledge allay mental disquietude, and the mind attaining ease, the body findeth ease also. It seemeth that affection is the root of all mental sorrow. It is affection that maketh every creature miserable, and bringeth on every kind of woe. Verily, affection is the root of all misery, and of all fear, of joy and grief, of every kind of pain. From affection springing all purposes, and it is from affection that spring the love of worldly goods. Both of these latter are sources of evil, though the first, our purposes, is worse than the second, and has a small portion of fire thrust into the hollow of a tree, consumeth the tree itself to its roots. Even so affection, ever so little, destroyeth both virtue and profit. Ye cannot be regarded to have renounced the world, who hath merely withdrawn from worldly possessions. Ye, however, who though in actual contact with the world regardeth its faults, may be said to have truly renounced the world, freed from every evil passion, soul dependent on nothing. With such a one hath truly renounced the world. Therefore should no one seek to place his affections on either friends or the wealth he hath earned, and so should affection for one's own person be extinguished by knowledge, like the lotus leaf that is never drenched by water. The souls of men capable of distinguishing between the ephemeral and the everlasting, of men devoted to the pursuit of the eternal, conversant with the scriptures, and purified by knowledge, can never be moved by affection. A man that is influenced by affection is tortured by desire, and from the desire that springeth up in his heart, his thirst for worldly possessions increaseth. Verily, this thirst is sinful, and is regarded as the source of all anxieties. It is this terrible thirst, fraught with sin, that leaneth unto unrighteous acts. Those find happiness that can renounce this thirst, which can never be renounced by the wicked, which decayeth not with the decay of the body, and which is truly a fatal disease. It hath neither beginning nor end, dwelling within the heart. It destroyeth creatures like a fire of incorporeal origin, and as a faggot of wood is consumed by the fire that is fed by itself. Even so doth a person of impure soul find destruction from the covetousness born of his heart, and as creatures endued with life have ever a dread of death, so men of wealth are in constant apprehension of the king and the thief, of water and fire, and even of their relatives. And as a morsel of meat, if in air, may be devoured by birds, if on ground by beasts of prey, and if in water by the fishes, even so is a man of wealth exposed to dangers wherever he may be. To many the wealth they own is their bane, and he that beholding happiness is wealth in wealth becometh wedded to it, knoweth not true happiness, and hence ascension of wealth is viewed as that which increaseth covetousness and folly. Indeed, wealth alone is the root of niggardliness and boastfulness, pride and fear and anxiety. These are the miseries of men that the wise see in riches. Men undergo infinite miseries in the acquisition and retention of wealth. its expenditure also is fraught with grief. Nay, sometimes life itself is lost for the sake of wealth. The abandonment of wealth produces misery, and even they that are cherished by one's wealth become enemies for the sake of that wealth. When therefore the possession of wealth is fraught with such misery, one should not mind its loss. It is the ignorant alone who are discontented. The wise, however, are always content. The thirst of wealth can never be assuaged. Contentment is the highest happiness. Therefore, it is that the wise regard contentment as the highest object of pursuit. The wise, knowing the instability of youth and beauty, of life and treasure hoards, of prosperity and the company of the loved ones, never covet them. Therefore, one should refrain from the acquisition of wealth, bearing the pain incident to it. None that is rich is free from trouble, and it is for this that the virtuous applaud them that are free from the desire of wealth. And as regards those that pursue wealth for purposes of virtue, it is better for them to refrain altogether from such pursuit. For surely it is better not to touch mire at all than to wash it off after having been besmeared with it. And O Yudhishthira, it behoveth thee not to covet anything, and if thou wouldst have virtue, emancipate thyself from desire of worldly possessions. Yudhishthira said, O Brahmana, this my desire of wealth is not for enjoying it when obtained. It is only for the support of the Brahmanas that I desire it, and not because I am actuated by avarice. For what purpose, O Brahmana, doth one like us lead a domestic life if we cannot other cherish and support those that follow him? All creatures are seen to divide the food they procure amongst those that depend on them. So should a person leading a domestic life give a share of his food to yatis, brahmacharins that have renounced cooking for themselves. The houses of the good men can never be in want of grass for seat, space for rest, water to wash and assuage thirst, and fourthly, sweet words. To the very a bed to one fatigued with standing, a seat to the thirsty, water unto the hungry. Food should never be given to a guest or due pleasant looks and a cheerful heart and sweet words. The host, rising up, should advance towards the guest, offer him a seat, and duly worship him. Even this is eternal morality. They that perform not the Agnihotra, nor wait upon bulls, nor cherish their kinsmen, and guests, and friends, and sons, and wives, and servants, are consumed with sin for such neglect. None should cook his food for himself alone, and none should slay an animal without dedicating it to the gods, the Pitris, and guests, nor should one eat of that food which hath not been duly dedicated to the gods and Pitris, by scattering food on the earth, morning and evening, for the behoof of dogs and chandalas and birds, should a person perform the Vishwadeva sacrifice. He that eateth the Vigasa is regarded as eating ambrosia. What remaineth in a sacrifice after dedication to the gods and the Pitris is regarded as ambrosia, and what remaineth after feeding the guest is called Vigasa, and is equivalent to ambrosia itself. Feeding a guest is equivalent to a sacrifice, and the pleasant looks the host casteth upon the guest, the attention he devoteth to him, the sweet words in which he addresseth him, the respect he payeth by following him, and the food and drink with which he treateth him, are the 5 dakshinas in that sacrifice. He who giveth without stint food to a fatigued wayfarer, never seen before, obtaineth merit that is great, and he who leading a domestic life followeth such practices acquireth religious merit that is said to be very great. O Brahmana, what is thy opinion on this? Saunaka said, Alas, this world is full of contradictions. That which shameth the good gratifieth the wicked. Alas, moved by ignorance and passion, and slaves of their own senses, even fools perform many acts of apparent merit to gratify in afterlife their appetites. With eyes open are these men led astray by their seducing senses, even as a charioteer who hath lost his senses by restive and wicked steeds. When any of the six senses findeth its particular object, the desire springeth up in the heart to enjoy that particular object. And thus when one's heart proceedeth to enjoy the objects of any particular sense, a wish is entertained, which in its turn giveth birth to a resolve, and finally, like unto an insect's falling into a flame from love of light, the man falleth into the fire of temptation, pierced by the shafts of the object of enjoyment, discharged by the desire, constituting the seed of the resolve, and thenceforth blinded by sensual pleasure, which he seeketh without stint, and steeped in dark ignorance and folly, which he mistaketh for a state of happiness, he knoweth not himself, and like unto a wheel that is incessantly rolling every creature from ignorance and deed and desire, falleth into virtuous states in this world, wandering from one birth to another, and rangeth the entire circle of existences, from a Brahma to the point of a blade of grass, now in water, now in land, and now again in the air. This then is the carrier of those that are without knowledge. Listen now to the course of the wise, they that are intent on profitable virtue, and are desirous of emancipation. The Vedas enjoin act, but renounce interest in action. Therefore shouldest thou act, renouncing abhimana, performance of sacrifices, study of the Vedas, gifts, penance, truth in both speech and act, forgiveness, subduing the senses, and renunciation of desire. These have been declared to be the 8 cardinal duties constituting the true path. Of these, the 4 first pave the way to the world of the Pitris, and these should be practiced without abhimana. The 4 last are always observed by the pious to attain the heaven of the gods, and the pure in spirit should ever follow these 8 paths. Those who wish to subdue the world for purpose of salvation should ever act fully renouncing motives, effectually subduing their senses, rigidly observing particular vows, devotedly serving their preceptors, austerely regulating their fare, diligently studying the Vedas, renouncing action as mean, and restraining their hearts. By renouncing desire and aversion, the gods have attained prosperity. It is by virtue of their wealth of yoga that the Rudras and the Sadyas and the Adityas and the Vasus and the twins Ashwins rule the creatures. Therefore, O son of Kunti, like unto them do thou, O Bharata, entirely refraining from action with motive, strive to attain success in yoga and by ascetic austerities. Thou hast already achieved such success so far as thy debts to thy ancestors, both male and female, concerned, and that success also which is derived from action, sacrifices, do thou for serving the regenerate ones. Endeavor to attain success in penances. Those that are crowned with ascetic success can, by virtue of that success, do whatever they list. Do thou, therefore, practicing asceticism, realize all thy wishes. Thus ends the second section in the Aranyaka Parva of the Vana Parva.